What you're about to discover was not erased by accident. It was erased by design. It was carefully, systematically, and deliberately hidden from the world, because it revealed a direct line to the divine that no system, no empire, and no institution could ever hope to control. It was a truth so powerful, so liberating, that it threatened to dismantle the very foundations of spiritual authority by placing the ultimate key not in the hands of a chosen few, but within the heart of every living soul. For 2,000 years, this knowledge has slept beneath layers of dogma and doctrine, a forgotten legacy whispered only in the silent winds of the desert and etched into scrolls that were meant to turn to dust. But some truths are not meant to be forgotten forever. Some truths wait patiently for a time when humanity is ready to remember. That time is now. Have you ever stood in the quiet of your own life, in a moment of profound need or deep questioning, and sent a prayer out into the vastness of the cosmos, only to be met with a deafening silence? It is a silence that has haunted humanity for millennia, a feeling of separation that has become the bedrock of our modern spiritual condition. We have built cathedrals of breathtaking beauty, written libraries of sacred texts, and followed rituals passed down through generations, all in an attempt to bridge this perceived chasm between ourselves and the source of all creation. We have been taught to ask, to plead, to worship from a distance. But what if the silence we experience is not an absence of the divine, but simply the result of a lost language? What if we have been trying to open a lock with the wrong key, a key given to us by the very systems that benefit from the door remaining closed? This is not a journey into an alternate history. It is a journey into a deeper history, a suppressed history that flows like a subterranean river beneath the official narratives we have been told. We travel back to an age of sun-scorched sands and vibrant spiritual inquiry, a time before creeds were carved in stone and before the Word of God was bound in a single book. In the 1st and 2nd centuries, the teachings of the Master, Jesus, were not a religion of obedience, but a path of illumination. He was known not as a king to be worshipped on a throne, but as a great guide, an illuminator who taught the way to gnosis, a direct, personal, and transformative knowledge of the divine. His most profound teachings were not about how to earn entry into a distant heaven, but how to realize the kingdom of heaven that already exists, silent and radiant, within you. This ancient wisdom centered on a concept that has been all but erased from our collective memory: the monad. This was not the distant judging deity of later dogma. The monad was understood as the ineffable one, the indivisible and perfect source from which all reality, including our own consciousness, emanates. The goal of the spiritual path was not to follow rules, but to remember one's own divine origin and re-establish a conscious connection with this silent, all-pervading source. And the most forbidden truth, the revelation that led to the burning of scrolls and the branding of mystics as heretics, was this: Jesus provided his followers with a spiritual technology, a series of 5 practical internal methods for speaking directly to the monad, a way to bypass any and all intermediaries and experience the divine for oneself. What you are about to learn is the map to that forgotten path. This is the knowledge that was sacrificed for the sake of control, the personal empowerment that was traded for institutional power. The rediscovery of this wisdom is not merely an intellectual curiosity. It is an invitation to reclaim a part of yourself that has been asleep for centuries. It is an activation of a memory that lives deep within your soul, a memory of your own divinity and your birthright to communicate directly with the source of all that is. If you have ever felt that there is more to the story, more to your own spiritual potential than you have been led to believe, then your intuition has guided you here for a reason. Stay with us on this journey to the very end and subscribe to this channel to continue the path of awakening. For we are about to unlock the door that was hidden and learn the 5 ways to speak to the monad, and finally, get an answer. To understand the silence, we must first travel back to a time of 1,000 spiritual fires, before the Word of God was captured in a single book and before faith was forged into an instrument of empire. We must leave behind the cold stone of cathedrals and journey to the sun-scorched sands of the 1st and 2nd centuries. Here, in the whispering winds of the Egyptian and Syrian deserts, the teachings of the Master were not a religion of obedience, but a living, breathing path of illumination. This was an age of profound spiritual seeking, where communities like the Valentinians and the Sethians gathered not to worship a distant king, but to learn from a great guide, an illuminator who taught the way to gnosis, a direct, intimate, and transformative knowledge of the divine. They were the keepers of a deeper memory, a more radical truth that the world was not yet ready to forget. At the heart of this ancient wisdom was a concept so pure, so vast, that it has been almost completely erased from our modern consciousness: the monad. This was not the judging, anthropomorphic deity who sits on a celestial throne, dispensing rewards and punishments. The monad was the ineffable one, the silent, indivisible, and perfect source from which all reality, including the spark of consciousness within you, emanates. It was the ultimate unity hidden behind the illusion of separation. For these early mystics, the purpose of life was not to follow a set of external rules to earn entry into a faraway heaven. The purpose was to remember one's own divine origin, to peel back the layers of the conditioned self, and to re-establish a conscious, living connection with this all-pervading source. This was not a path of belief, but a path of becoming. Here, the river of history splits, and the hidden stream is the one we must follow. While the official narrative focuses on the apostles, the missions, and the slow formation of a new religion, this deeper story reveals something far more potent. The Gnostic Christ, the Master of Mysteries, did not simply offer parables and moral lessons. To his most devoted followers, in the quiet of hidden rooms and beneath the light of desert stars, he imparted a spiritual technology. It was a series of practical, internal methods, a sacred science of the soul designed to open a direct channel of communication with the monad. This was the ultimate revelation, the key that unlocked the kingdom of heaven not as a destination after death, but as a state of consciousness available in the here and now. It was a teaching that bypassed the need for any earthly intermediary, no priest, no bishop, no institution. Can you feel the danger in that truth? Can you sense the seismic shift it represents? A teaching that places the ultimate authority not in a book or a building, but within the silent temple of the human heart, is the greatest possible threat to any system built on hierarchical control. As the 3rd and 4th centuries dawned, a new power began to consolidate its earthly dominion. The architects of orthodoxy, driven by a desire for unity and imperial favor, understood this danger perfectly. Their entire edifice of power, their wealth, their political influence, was being built upon a single foundational premise: that they, and they alone, were the mediators between humanity and God. Salvation, they taught, was a gift to be dispensed by the institution. How could such a system survive if every soul knew it held the key to its own salvation within? This was not a simple, theological disagreement. It was the collision of two opposing destinies for humanity, one of spiritual sovereignty and one of spiritual dependence. The councils that followed, such as the infamous Council of Nicaea, were not merely about defining doctrine, they were about choosing a future. They were the moments where the institutional mind chose control over empowerment, dogma over direct experience. A decision was made to create a single, unified, and controllable state religion. To do this, All other fires had to be extinguished. The path of gnosis, of direct knowledge, was rebranded as the ultimate heresy. The system could not tolerate mystics who could speak to God for themselves. It needed a flock that would listen only to the voice of the shepherd. And so began the Great Forgetting, an intellectual and spiritual purge on a scale the world had never seen. It was an act of systematic erasure, carried out with the chilling efficiency of an empire protecting its most vital asset, its monopoly on the sacred. Scrolls containing this forgotten legacy were declared forbidden and cast into flames, their ancient wisdom turning to ash and smoke. The keepers of this knowledge, the Gnostics, were hunted, silenced, and branded as enemies of the one true faith. Their communities were scattered, their traditions driven underground. The architects of this new world did not just hide a few inconvenient texts, they sought to sever humanity's memory of its own divine capacity. What else was lost in those fires? What other truths about our own potential were deliberately turned to dust? The silence we experience today, that profound sense of separation from the source of our being, is the long, lingering echo of that ancient suppression. The spiritual void that haunts the modern world was not an accident of history, it was a deliberate creation. The system succeeded beyond its wildest dreams, crafting a civilization that looks for the divine in the sky, in ancient books, and in gilded halls. Everywhere except the one place the great illuminator told us to look. The conflict was never truly about God. It was about who held the map. For nearly 2 millennia, that map has been buried, a treasure guarded by the sands of time, waiting for a generation with the courage to begin the search anew. The mystery is not just about a lost truth, it is about a stolen birthright. But where does a truth go when it is banished? Does it simply vanish, like smoke from an extinguished flame? Or does it, like water, seek a new path, flowing into the deep hidden places of the earth, waiting for the ground to shift? The proof of this forgotten legacy is not found in the grand monuments of empire or the gilded histories written by the victors. It is found in the silence they left behind and in the whispers that survived in spite of them. For nearly 2 millennia, this knowledge was a ghost, a rumor on the lips of mystics, a secret passed in hushed tones from one generation of seekers to the next. But the desert, the great keeper of secrets, held its breath. It cradled a truth in the dark, dry earth, preserving a testament that would one day shatter the foundations of the official story. The evidence for this lost path was not destroyed, it was merely sleeping. In the winter of 1945, near the town of Nag Hammadi in Upper Egypt, a local farmer, searching for fertilizer, struck his spade against a large sealed clay jar. What he unearthed that day was not treasure in the form of gold, but something infinitely more precious, a library of ancient knowledge, a message in a bottle sent across 16 centuries of imposed silence. This collection of 13 leather-bound papyrus codices contained over 50 distinct texts, scriptures that had been declared heresy, ordered to be destroyed, and thought to be lost to the flames of history forever. They were hidden around the year 367 AD, likely by monks from a nearby monastery, in a desperate act of preservation. Against an edict demanding the obliteration of all such wisdom, this was not a random collection. It was the sacred archive of the Gnostic illuminators, the very teachings that the architects of orthodoxy had tried so hard to erase. The discovery at Nag Hammadi was a cosmic tremor, the moment the subterranean river of truth finally broke through to the surface. Among these resurrected scrolls was a text that reads like a direct transmission from the Master of Mysteries himself. The Gospel of Thomas. It contains no narrative of birth, miracles, or resurrection. Instead, it is a stark and stunning collection of 114 secret sayings spoken by the living Jesus. Its opening words set the tone for a journey not of faith, but of inner discovery. Whoever finds the interpretation of these sayings will not experience death. The teachings within are a radical departure from the doctrines that would later be enforced. Saying 3 proclaims, "The kingdom is inside of you and it is outside of you." When you come to know yourselves, then you will become known, and you will realize that it is you who are the sons of the living Father. Here, in ink preserved by the dry desert air, is the core of the forbidden truth. Divinity is not a distant prize to be earned, but an inner reality to be realized. The path to God is not through an institution, but through the gnosis of the self. Another scroll, known as the Apocryphon of John, or the Secret Book of John, offers the cosmic map that contextualizes this inner journey. It is a profound and detailed revelation given by the risen Christ to his disciple, a vision that explains the very nature of our reality and the origin of our spiritual amnesia. It describes the monad, the pure, ineffable, and perfect source. It tells of a fall from this perfect unity and the creation of the material world by a lesser, arrogant entity, the demiurge, who falsely believes himself to be the one true God. This cosmology explained to the early mystics why the world felt so full of suffering and ignorance, and why they felt a deep, inner longing for a home they could not name. Most importantly, it revealed that within every human being is a spark of the monad's original light, trapped in the prison of the material body. The entire spiritual path, then, was a process of awakening to this inner spark and learning how to liberate it, to remember one's divine origin and return to the unity of the source. This stream of wisdom, though most powerfully preserved at Nag Hammadi, was not an isolated spring. Its echoes can be found in the fragments of other suppressed traditions that flowed alongside it. The Hermetic texts of ancient Egypt, attributed to the great sage Hermes Trismegistus, speak of a divine mind, or nous, and teach that by purifying one's own mind, one can attain direct knowledge of God, famously stating, "As above, so below." The Neoplatonic philosophers like Plotinus described a similar journey of the soul, ascending from the world of multiplicity back to a state of ecstatic union, or henosis, with the ineffable One. Even within the tightly controlled walls of the Orthodox tradition, this mystical impulse could not be entirely extinguished, surfacing in the words of figures like Meister Eckhart, who spoke of the Godhead beyond God and the spark of the soul, where humanity and the divine meet. The truth was too fundamental to be contained by a single tradition, and too powerful to be completely erased. Ultimately, the most profound proof of this lost knowledge lies in the violence of its suppression. Empires do not waste their energy hunting ghosts or burning blank pages. The systematic, centuries-long campaign to eradicate Gnosticism is a testament to the power of the truth it held. The system did not fear a competing theology. It feared a technology of liberation. It feared a humanity that knew its own divinity, a humanity that could speak to the source for itself, a humanity that no longer needed a shepherd because it had discovered the guide within. The spiritual void that has haunted our world for so long is the shadow cast by those burning scrolls. The feeling of separation you may have felt is the lingering echo of that great forgetting. But the jar has been opened, the texts have been translated. The evidence is no longer buried in the sand. It is laid bare for all to see, and it reveals not just a lost history, but a map back to ourselves. And so, the scrolls speak. Again, their whispers, carried on the desert wind for 16 centuries, have finally found a listening ear in the heart of a world starved for meaning. But this discovery is not merely an event in history, an academic curiosity to be catalogued and placed behind museum glass. It is an event within you. The breaking of that clay jar in the Egyptian sand is a symbol for the breaking of a seal within the collective human soul. This knowledge, this forgotten legacy, was not unearthed so we could simply know what our ancestors once believed. It has returned because we are ready to experience what they once knew. It surfaces now because the profound spiritual thirst of our time can no longer be quenched by the shallow wells of dogma. The memory of our own divinity is stirring from its long slumber, and it recognizes the sound of its own name in these ancient, resurrected words. Have you ever felt it? That quiet, persistent ache of separation, a feeling of being an exile on your own planet, a stranger in your own skin, haunted by a vague homesickness for a place you cannot name. For centuries, we have been told this feeling is a flaw, a sign of our inherent unworthiness, a spiritual poverty that can only be remedied by supplication to an external power. But what if that feeling is not a flaw at all? What if it is a function of our design, a sacred compass needle trembling within us, forever pointing toward our forgotten source? The suppression of this ancient wisdom did more than just remove a few books from a library. It inflicted a deep wound upon the human psyche. It taught us to see the chasm between ourselves and the divine as a natural, uncrossable abyss, when in truth it is an artificial boundary, a wall built by systems that profited from our sense of isolation. The longing you feel is the memory of unity, the ghost of a connection that was deliberately severed. It is the most honest and sacred part of you calling you home. This is the heart of the great mystery. The truth that was deemed the ultimate heresy was not about the nature of God, but about the nature of you. The system could have tolerated 1,000 different names for the divine, 1,000 different rituals and prayers. The one thing it could not tolerate was the revelation that the seeker and the sought were one. The knowledge that a spark of the monad, a fragment of the pure, uncreated light, resided within every human soul was an existential threat to its entire structure of control. Why would anyone pay allegiance to a gatekeeper when they discovered the key was in their own pocket? Why would they seek salvation from an institution when they realized their very essence was already divine? The most dangerous idea in the world has never been atheism. It has always been the direct, personal, and unmediated experience of God, for that experience transforms a follower into a master. It replaces obedience with awakening. As you listen to these words, feel for a resonance deeper than your mind. This is not about learning a new set of beliefs to replace the old ones. It is an act of remembering. This ancient wisdom is a catalyst for activating an ancestral memory that lies dormant within your very cells. It is a truth that your soul already knows, a song it has been waiting to hear again. The Gnostic illuminators were not inventing a new path. They were charting a journey that is as old as consciousness itself. They were the keepers of a flame past, down through forgotten lineages, a timeless understanding of the human spirit and its innate capacity for divine communion. When these scrolls speak of the monad, of the inner spark, and of gnosis, they are not offering you a philosophy. They are handing you a mirror, reflecting a truth about your own identity that has been hidden from you for far too long. What changes in your world, in your life, the moment you begin to truly entertain this possibility? What shifts when you cease to see yourself as a flawed creature, begging for grace from a distant king, and begin to see yourself as a lost spark of divinity undertaking a great journey of remembrance? Your purpose is no longer about adhering to external rules or earning a place in a future paradise. Your purpose becomes the sacred work of this moment, to peel back the layers of conditioning, to heal the illusion of separation, and to become a clear and conscious channel for the intelligence, creativity, and light of the source, to express itself through you. This is the ultimate spiritual responsibility. It is the shift from being a passive believer to an active participant in the ongoing act of creation. This is the awakening the great illuminator intended for us all. The rediscovery of this lost truth is not an accident of fate. It is a sign. It is a signal that a cycle of forgetting is ending and a new cycle of remembering is beginning. For centuries, the path of direct knowledge was a subterranean river, flowing in. Darkness accessible only to the few who knew where to dig. But now the ground is breaking, the water is surging to the surface. The scrolls did more than just confirm that this path existed. They preserved the very instructions for how to walk it. They contain the spiritual technology, the sacred science of the soul that the architects of empire tried so desperately to destroy. They understood that if this knowledge were ever to be widely known, no wall could contain it, no army could defeat it, and no system could control it, because it unlocks a power that is inherent to every human being. We now stand at a precipice in history, and a threshold in our own evolution. We have traced the origins of the silence that has haunted humanity. We have seen the evidence of the truth that was buried and touched the wound that its absence left behind. But the journey from this point forward is no longer about looking back at what was lost. It is about stepping into the living reality of what has been found. The map has been recovered. The language of the soul is being relearned. The 5 methods for speaking to the monad are not historical artifacts. They are a living initiation, waiting to be activated. The question is no longer whether this knowledge is real. The only question left is, are you ready to use it? And so we arrive at the heart of the great reveal, the axis upon which the entire history of our spiritual search now turns. The unearthing of the Nag Hammadi scrolls was more than the recovery of forgotten gospels. It was the rediscovery of a lost human faculty. For centuries, we have approached these texts as artifacts, as alternative histories or theological curiosities. We have debated their origins and catalogued their beliefs. But in doing so, we have missed the entire point. We have been reading the blueprint for a cathedral and admiring the calligraphy without ever realizing it contains the instructions to build it within ourselves. The true turning point, the revelation that changes everything, is not that these texts exist. It is the staggering realization that the 5 methods they contain are not metaphors. They are not philosophical ideals. They are a coherent, practical, and repeatable spiritual technology for initiating direct contact with the source of reality. This is the truth that makes the old world tremble. The system did not fear a different story about God. It feared a user's manual for the human soul falling into the hands of the people. This revelation rearranges the entire landscape of our spiritual past and present. Suddenly, the 2,000-year silence is not a mystery of divine indifference, but a problem of incorrect methodology. It suggests we have been sending our prayers out into the cosmos, using the wrong frequency, speaking a language the universe does not recognize. The Gnostic illuminator was not teaching a new way to plead. He was teaching a new way to perceive. He was not offering a better set of beliefs, but a more effective set of internal tools. The path was not one of faith in the sense of blind belief, but of pistis in its original meaning, trust. The trust required to conduct a profound inner experiment and witness the results for oneself. The suppression of this knowledge was, therefore, not merely the burning of books. It was the decommissioning of the soul's most sacred instrument. It was the deliberate act of hiding the keys to the kingdom inside the very people who were then told the gates were locked from the outside. What then are the consequences of this shift? It means that prayer, in its most potent form, is not a petition, but a calibration. It is the art of tuning the instrument of your own consciousness to resonate with the silent, all-pervading hum of the monad. The 5 ways are the 5 stages of this tuning process. They are a sequence of inner postures, a progression of awareness that moves the seeker from the noise of the ego mind to the profound stillness where true communion occurs. It is here that we begin to understand the depth of what was lost. The architects of orthodoxy replaced this intricate science of the soul with a simplified system of supplication and obedience. They took a living, dynamic process of awakening and replaced it with a static set of rules. They taught us to speak, but not how to listen. They taught us to ask, but not how to receive. The rediscovery of this spiritual technology is an invitation to reclaim the other half of that sacred conversation. The deeper we explore this knowledge, the more we understand that this is not a mechanical process, but an organic one. It is the relearning of a forgotten language. The monad does not communicate in the linear, structured syntax of human speech. It speaks in the language of pure being, in symbols, in synchronicities, in the sudden bloom of intuitive insight, in the archetypal dramas that play out in our dreams and in the patterns of the world around us. The 5 ways are the grammar of this sacred, silent tongue. They teach us how to quiet the mind enough to see the symbols, how to focus our intent to ask the right questions, and how to open our hearts to interpret the answers that are constantly flowing toward us. This is why the Gnostics were mystics, not theologians. They were not interested in debating the nature of God. They were dedicated to experiencing it. They knew that a single moment of direct gnosis was worth more than 1,000 volumes of scripture, for it transforms knowledge into wisdom and belief into being. The scrolls themselves bear witness to this transformative process. In texts like the Gospel of Philip, the relationship between the illuminator and his followers is described not as that of a teacher and students, but of a bridegroom and a bridal chamber. This was not a classroom, it was an alchemical vessel, a sacred space where a profound inner union, a hieros gamos, could take place. The teachings were an initiation, a transmission of a state of consciousness that could not be conveyed by words alone. The Master was awakening the inner spark within his disciples, reminding it of its own nature and showing it the way to reconnect with the greater fire of the monad. These were not sermons designed to be memorized, they were activations designed to be experienced. They were a living fire passed from one soul to another, a flame that the forces of empire sought to extinguish precisely because they knew that a single awakened soul could ignite 1,000 others. What does this mean for you here and now, in the quiet of this moment? It means that the feeling of separation, the spiritual ache that has haunted your private hours, is not an incurable condition. It is a symptom of a connection that has been temporarily lost, a circuit that has been disconnected. And it means the power to restore that connection does not lie in a book, a building, or another person. It lies dormant within the very structure of your own consciousness, waiting for the correct sequence of keys to be turned. This ancient wisdom, resurrected from the desert sands, is that sequence. It is the map that shows you how to navigate your own inner world to find the silent, radiant center where the self dissolves and the source is revealed. The journey is not outward to a distant heaven, but inward to the kingdom that has been waiting for you all along. The implications are staggering, and the path is now clear. We have followed the whispers of a forgotten legacy from the fires of its suppression to the miracle of its rebirth. We have understood that this is not just a story from the past, but a living invitation to a different future. The great forgetting is over. The age of remembering has begun. But understanding the map is not the same as taking the journey. The scrolls have shown us the door. They have told us that the keys exist. Now, we must learn how to use them. Each of the 5 ways is a key that unlocks a deeper chamber within the temple of the soul, each one preparing you for the next, leading you progressively from the outer court of the conditioned mind to the Holy of Holies, where the voice of the silence speaks. The first key, the foundation upon which all the others rest, is the one that has been most profoundly misunderstood in our loud, distracted world. Are you prepared to learn the way of absolute stillness? We have journeyed together through the sands of time, from the deafening silence of a forgotten age to the resonant whispers of a truth reborn. We have stood in the shadow of burning libraries and felt the weight of a legacy deliberately erased. We have traced the path of a subterranean river of knowledge until it broke through the surface, and we have now held in our hands the resurrected map. The five ways, the way of absolute stillness, of sacred inquiry, of symbolic sight, of the dissolving self, and of divine expression, are not merely a list of techniques. They are the five facets of a single luminous diamond. They are the grammar of a language your soul has never truly forgotten. This is the climax of our journey, but it is the beginning of yours. The great mystery was never about finding a way to talk to God. It was, and has always been, about remembering how to be in communion with the divinity that breathes through you and as you. The revelation that changes everything is this: the silence was a lie. Not a lie told by the universe, but a lie told about it. The monad, the ineffable source, was never distant, never withholding, never silent. It is the very fabric of existence, the stillness beneath the noise, the consciousness looking out through your eyes at this very moment. The system that rose to power did not just hide a few inconvenient scrolls, it inverted the very direction of the spiritual quest. It taught us to look to the heavens, to priests, and to books for a truth that could only ever be found in the silent temple of the human heart. The great illuminator did not come to build an institution to stand between you and the source. He came to give you the keys to dissolve the walls within yourself. This ancient wisdom, this forgotten legacy, is not a new religion. It is the cancellation of the need for one. It is the final declaration of your spiritual sovereignty. What then do you do with this knowledge? How does it transform the life you will live from this moment forward? It means that your moments of quiet contemplation are no longer empty waiting, but active listening in the way of stillness. Your deepest questions are no longer cries into the void, but sacred inquiries posed to the intelligence of the cosmos itself. The world around you is no longer a random collection of events and objects. It is a living oracle, speaking to you in the language of symbols, if only you have the eyes to see. Your struggles with the ego are no longer a source of shame, but the sacred work of dissolving the self, of polishing the mirror until it perfectly reflects the light of the One. And your work, your art, your relationships, your very presence on this earth become the ultimate prayer, the divine expression of the monad flowing into the world through the unique vessel that is you. This is the most profound application of this recovered truth. It is not an escape from the world, but a deeper, more meaningful engagement with it. You are not meant to simply receive messages from the source. You are meant to become a conscious channel for its expression. The purpose of this communion is not for your benefit alone. It is so that the boundless creativity, intelligence, and love of the monad can find new ways to manifest in a world aching for meaning. You become a co-creator, an active participant in the ongoing miracle of existence. This is the shift from being a follower of a path to becoming the path itself. This is the awakening that the architects of empire feared most. For a world filled with such awakened souls cannot be controlled, cannot be deceived, and cannot be kept in the dark. The ultimate lesson, the timeless wisdom that echoes through these Gnostic Gospels and into the heart of your own experience, is that the journey outward is always a distraction from the journey inward. For 2,000 years, we have been taught to seek validation, salvation, and truth from external authorities. This revelation is a call to come home. It is an invitation to reclaim the authority of your own inner knowing, your own direct experience of the sacred. The kingdom of heaven is not a destination you must earn. It is your origin, a reality you must remember. The most sacred scroll was never written on papyrus. It is etched into the very fabric of your soul. This forbidden truth is now yours. It is not just information, it is an activation. It is a seed of remembrance planted in the fertile ground of your awareness. What you do with it will define the next chapter of your story. So we leave you with this question, a sacred inquiry for you to take into the stillness of your own heart. Now that you know the door to the divine was never locked, what is the first truth you will seek from the silence within? Share your reflections in the comments below, and let us create a space of collective awakening. If this message has stirred a memory within you, help us carry this flame of knowledge. Subscribe to this channel and share this revelation with another soul you know is ready to remember. Together, we are turning the page on an age of forgetting and writing the first chapter of a new era of gnosis. The lost truth has been found, and our shared journey of remembrance has just begun.